Hi, I'm Catherine Jean Lopez from the National Review Institute, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another session of this Fridays for Life series that we've been doing since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. We're talking about different aspects of the issue, and this week we're talking about healing. And I want to, as an aside, first of all, thank you for watching this. Thank you for your support if you support the National Review Institute. And on Sunday, we have a deadline for a cruise in November where different speakers will be talking about different policy issues. So if you're interested, Miranda Melvin, who is working the back end here, we'll put the link in the chat box. I encourage you to take a look if that's the kind of thing you're interested in. Again, nrinstitute.org too, if you want more information on the work that we do. I'm certainly glad for NRI's support. So today, as I mentioned, we're talking about healing and mercy. Teresa Bonapartis literally wrote the book on it. She wrote a healing journey through divine mercy. And her ministry is working with women who have had abortions, helping them find peace and healing. And that's a journey she herself has been on. Teresa, we see each other at least once a month, but we hardly ever get to talk because we're praying at our New York Witness for Life. So it's a delight to be able to actually talk to you with some friends listening in, who also, I might say, if you're watching this live, feel free to put questions in the chat box and I'll weave them into our conversation. And so Teresa, thank you so much for being here.
I'm really happy to be here, Catherine. Thanks. I always love talking about God's mercy and healing, right?
Well, we need healing so badly, right? Individually and our culture. One thing that I've been increasingly aware of, and you deal with this all the time, there are so many hurt people because of 49 years of legal abortion.
Right.
And I was talking to a friend of mine who's pro-life, has adult daughters who are just up in arms, was the phrase she used, about the fact that Roe versus Wade was overturned. And, it's not because they're enthusiastic about abortion, they themselves are mothers, but particularly in the media, we hear all of these desperate cases, right? We hear misinformation, a woman can't be treated for her cancer if she's pregnant now, which is not true. Teresa, how do you address all of that? People
Yeah,
really hurt.
This is a loaded question, but it's a great question. It really is, because it's funny, when Dobbs happened and whatever, and I was praying about it, I really can relate to them being angry. First of all, we have to recognize that these people grew up with abortion. It's been around their whole life, and they've been told that abortion is their right. They've been told even that they can't be successful in life if abortion isn't available to them.
That they don't have freedom.
Right. They don't have any freedom. Like, there's just so many things that they've been brainwashed with. So then all of a sudden to say, oh no, this isn't the way it's going to be, like they're going crazy. I mean, the district attorney here in Westchester County, where I live, Westchester County, New York, she actually made some comment that her 14-year-old daughter said, when Dobbs happened, her 14-year-old daughter said something about how like her life was ruined, kind of a comment. And I thought to myself, how does a 14-year-old, and that she couldn't be successful, what's been fed to this 14-year-old girl who has her whole life ahead of her, that thinks that, because of Dobbs, that her life isn't going to be fulfilling? But this is the message that all these women have gotten. And so they're angry because I think they feel like we're saying, oops, there's been a mistake made. And then think about it. How many of them have had abortion? So their babies are dead. Maybe they don't have faith in God, or they don't have that relationship with God. So here we are telling them that abortion is not a good thing all of a sudden, and they're without their babies, and their whole life doesn't make any sense anymore. So there is, as you know, that we see every month in the Witness for Life, there's just such an outrage there coming from them because of that. And I truly think that, like you said, the media has such a huge part in it. I mean, like I read these things every day now, the headlines, like you said, and I can't even believe some of the things that I'm reading. It's such a bunch of lies. Number one, yesterday I read one that I found was very interesting. There's a site called Life Healthline, it's called. I've never seen it before, but it's supposedly one of those medical, online things. And there was an article in there. I actually printed it out. It's Roe versus Wade, the mental and physical health effects of anti-abortion laws. And within this article, they're talking about what could be the mental effects that would impact somebody who's denied an abortion. And then every single one of them is an effect of post-abortion trauma, which they continue to deny. They refuse to even say that the pain and grief that millions of women are feeling is real, which makes them feel like they're out there alone and in isolation and that they're going crazy. But yet this article is saying if you can't get an abortion, they list anxiety, low self-esteem, anger, panic attacks, paranoia, post-traumatic stress, guilt, shame, sexual dysfunction, every single symptom of post-abortion. And yet they deny the impact of abortion. I was interviewed by the New York Times a couple of weeks ago about this whole thing. And, when he called me, the only reason why I did it is because the Sisters of Life told him to call me. But anyway, so I said, okay,
yes.
And they asked me about my abortion experience. And I said to him, if you're not going to tell everything that I'm going to say now, then I don't want you to use what I say. And he promised me he would, and he did. But before me, they had this paragraph in there about how there's been years of research and that there's no evidence of post-abortion trauma. And I sit there and I read this stuff and I'm filled with deep unbelief because I've been doing this work for 30 years. The sisters and I started the Entering Canaan Ministry. It was 26 years last year that we've been, that Entering Canaan has been around. And we get like between 100 and 200 new people every year just right in our area. And yet they continue to deny that abortion impacts women, men, siblings, anybody, that it's impossible that it impacts everybody. And it's just so amazing. And I think that you'll agree, like if some of the signs we see at the Witness for Life, I mean, I sit there, like last month when we were there was this one girl who had a sign, that I started with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal and a guy that helps us in the ministry. We started about 11 years ago, retreats for siblings of aborted babies. And it's heart-wrenching, that whole thing. But one of the women last month, did you see her sign? Yeah. My mom had an abortion at 14. If she didn't have that abortion, I wouldn't be here. And you have to wonder, like, how many people are out there that feel that way, that it's so hard for them, to not justify the abortion. Like there's such a contradiction there. In one sense, they feel guilty because they're alive and that baby isn't. But at the same time, if that baby wasn't aborted, then they think that they wouldn't be alive. So aside from the mothers and the fathers, we have that whole other aspect of how many siblings are out there that, are suffering because they know that a brother or sister isn't alive. It's just the damage. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I always think that I know the damage and God shows me more and more all the time. It's like so astronomical. I don't think we're ever going to be able to fully comprehend what it's done. I don't think we'd be able to handle it,
Well, yeah. I mean, when you think about, there have been at least 63 million abortions since Roe versus Wade, at least.
Right.
And that's overwhelming to think that, our culture says it's just a medical procedure. You're supposed to just pretend that you're not hurting, that you weren't just pregnant and now you're not. You know?
And just lying and denying it, denying your feelings, like denying what your experiences are. And that probably, like thank God for prayer, because if it wasn't for prayer and the mercy of God, I would never be able to do this work, because you could get really angry reading this stuff. I mean, I deal every day with people that have been impacted by abortion, that are suffering, that are working through their healing process, which most often takes a very long time. There's different stages in the healing process, and so you're seeing this, you're seeing the damage day after day, and then you're hearing all these people talk about how there's no such thing as post-abortion stress, and this is a good for women, and you know, here in New York, the governor has what, $35 million set aside for people from out of state to be able to come and kill their babies here, and yet there's nothing for post-abortive people. And not only that, in her $35 million, she has something about how with those new laws that they passed, that if something goes wrong, those people that come from out of state can't sue. So how are you talking about caring about women? And in the meantime, you know, like sometimes I just like, how many people don't hear this message? How many people are sitting on their couches suffering in silence and alone, and don't know that there's any healing available for them, or feeling crazy because their feelings are denied and they keep being told that there's no such thing. And it breaks my heart. I mean, the oldest person I ever had was 93. It was someone who had actually written to Father Benedict Rochelle, and he got her letter and he passed it on to me and asked me to get in touch with her. And so we started this communication for a while, and she had her abortions in her late 20s. She had 3 of them, her late 20s and early 30s. Her husband was an alcoholic. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff there, but like she suffered for decades from her abortion. And all she kept saying is, I hope God could forgive me. I hope God could forgive me. And her children didn't even know. As a matter of fact, we communicated with each other until it got so bad that she couldn't live alone. And then she actually said to me, I can't talk to you anymore because I don't want my children to find out about my abortion. And I just prayed for her after that. I'm sure she's not around anymore. But I think to myself, how many women that old, how many women from 50 years ago, my time, I mean, my abortion was coerced by my father when I was a teenager. It was legal in the state of New York like it is now, but it was before Roe versus Wade. But in New York State, it was legal. And it's over 50 years since I had my abortion. And yet, you know, all these years, denial of the impact. And there's no question that it impacted my life. It took me years before I found any kind of help, because that's exactly what happened to me. I felt alone. I felt like there was no hope for me. I thought I was crazy. I thought that abortion's this great thing. Everybody's fine but me. That's the way I felt. Something's got to be wrong with me because it's bothering me. It took me years before I realized, wait a minute. You know, there's something wrong with them, not me. Because if you could kill your baby and not have it bother you, then something's wrong there, you know? But that's just not what society tells us. It's just not what society tells us. I have a friend who called me this morning, and she was telling me about a commercial on TV, like with all those lies about abortion in it. You know, just saying how it's a good thing and how, you know, they're trying to stop it altogether. So they actually have like advertisements out there. And you think to yourself, like she was just saying, who would have ever thought that we would ever be advertising, having commercials on television about abortion? Like it's just also, well, I say it's demonic.
Well, in the New York City subways, there are signs that assure you that abortion is legal. And
wow.
most of them seem to be in Spanish. I think of you mentioned the 90-year-old. I think often of Dorothy Day, who
right.
had an abortion, you know, sought God's healing, but in her 70s she was writing about that abortion still, because it impacts you in a way that can never go away.
Well, I think that. No, I was just going to say, you know, like you say, oh, could you be healed? Would you forget? I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget my son. That was my son. You know what I mean? I don't want to forget him. But yeah, it does. I think that, like, I really do believe it's diabolical. I was thinking the other day just about how, child sacrifice, we're paying them to sacrifice our kids. It's just so crazy, and I think that the wound is so deep that it comes in layers. The healing comes in layers. And, the beautiful thing is God's mercy is there waiting for people to come for healing, because he does want to heal them and he does want to make them whole. And he just keeps bringing you deeper and deeper into this wound, which I just think it goes to the core of people's souls. And again, and I think that's the anger with the pro-abortion people, because you see, like, again, going back to the witness of life, because I can't even think of anything that's more evident. Like, they have those signs, God loves abortion, and all this other stuff. And like, you can't even look at an abortion unless you know God's love. It's just so horrific that to look at it without having that the knowledge of God's forgiveness and mercy is impossible. And so they're on the defense and they're angry and they're acting like that because they have to keep justifying it. They have to keep rationalizing it, because if you don't have God in your life, how do you look at something like that? How do you look at something so horrific? The fact that you've participated in the death of your own child. You can't. I don't think you can. And so that's what they do. I mean, I pray for those people, that little prayer. I pray that prayer still every single day for them, because I just, like, you just see it in them. They're raging. It's just really sad when you think about it.
For people who don't know what we're talking about, there's this little prayer that you wrote up.
Yeah.
You have Maximilian Kolbe on one side, who of course gave up his life for another in a concentration camp, and you're praying for the healing of people.
Right. For the people that come to the Witness for Life, the pro-abortion people that are really, really angry, praying for the conversion, that they could be open to God's mercy, somehow
Right.
that mercy would get in there and they would have conversions. Maybe, by the way, it was interesting. A couple, I don't know, was it this month or, it was this month. There was this girl screaming at me because, I hold my sign. I have that sign that says I had an abortion. Life does not go back to normal, because that's what they tell women, right? Life will go back to normal if you have an abortion. Save your baby and yourself, with an 800 number. And she came up to me, and of course she was very sarcastic. She kept saying to me, "Oh, your abortion bothers you, baby? Oh, you should go to a psychiatrist." And she's going on and on. And of course I didn't answer her at all, but I felt like I just kept praying. But I thought it was very interesting, because at one point she said to me, "How old would your baby be?" My baby would be 14. And I was thinking to myself, for somebody whose abortion doesn't bother them, or is so detached or whatever, the exact age that your child would be. Like, and I found that very, very telling when she said that to me, and so again, I think it's just that justification. And like, these people, Catherine, I really think that they don't know a lot of them. It's hard to say that nowadays. People are like, "Oh, everybody knows," but I don't think everybody does know. I really do believe that they just still believe all the lies and stuff. It's just insane. There was something I read yesterday too about how women are, I don't know if you saw this one, how women are changing their methods of birth control so that they don't become pregnant, because they know they can't have abortions. And as I read it, I was thinking to myself, do they realize what they're even saying here? Like, what? So people didn't care what birth control they were using because they knew they could just go and have an abortion.
Right.
But now that they can't, so it's that insignificant? Has it gotten that insignificant that it really is being used as birth control? Abortion is being used as birth control.
That's the thing. When we hear all of these terribly difficult cases, that's not the majority of abortions in America. The majority of abortions in America are using it as birth control.
Right.
And as you do, I just feel for these women and men who are screaming at us, because as you said, you don't use the word demonic lightly. the reason you use the word demonic is because you see the darkness when we're out there. All we're doing is praying.
Right.
And I was watching when we go from Old St. Patrick's, just not even a block, to Planned Parenthood and pray the rosary across the street. And some of you may have seen this on Fox News or some other media. But when we got back, first of all, it took over an hour to even move.
A really long time last week. Yes.
Because they were a human blockade, these people protesting prayer, essentially. But when we finally got back, I was sort of at the front of the group. So I stood in the courtyard as people started, the prayers were walking back into the church. And it was, hand gestures and shame, as you're hearing F you and all these other things. And I'm just thinking, all of the, not only the lies they've been fed, but this is what I want to convey every time I'm out there, is we've done the culture as Catholics an injustice, because the church has not communicated the beauty of what the church believes about the truth of the human person and its value. And I think
also we have not, I always say that I always feel like we walk through the graveyard and, to bury the dead babies, and we've walked over the wounded. How much do you even hear outreach to people that need healing?
Right.
And that's part of the problem too, because people don't know that there's healing. They still believe the Catholic Church condemns them. And like with the demonic thing, I do believe abortion is demonic, but not those people.
Right.
Exactly. I believe that they're probably very good people inside, but they've just fallen for all this stuff.
Or been hurt by, people using them, people lying to them, manipulating them in all kinds of intimate ways, right? And I have only love and reverence for these people, because it's just looking out on it. It's so devastatingly sad. And I couldn't bear it if we weren't praying,
Yeah, well, that's the only way you could do it. But I think a lot of the signs are very telling. There was another one about, which is so true. One word I disagree with, but it said something like, everyone loves somebody who's had an abortion. True, everybody. Yeah. I believe that. And then, she said benefited from the abortion. Obviously, the benefited is the part I don't agree with. But
oh, you just got muted. It would not be a Zoom that if you get muted.
But I think that what was I saying? Oh yeah, everybody benefited. Obviously, I don't agree with the benefited, but obviously we all know somebody who's had an abortion. There's no question about it. It's so, Can you hear me? You can hear me. Yeah.
It's so prevalent here now.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. It's just heart-wrenching. And I think that the message of God's mercy, even still, there's not enough of it. There's not enough. There's a lot of judgment in the pro-life movement. And I'm the first one to say that abortion is a terrible sin, but you can't blame. I saw something online today on Facebook that was really disturbing. It was a little cartoon, and it was a father saying to his son something about, before you check out somebody to be married or whatever, make sure that she won't kill your kid, your child. And I just thought that was really crass and unfair, because people that think this is just a woman, ultimately, yes, the woman is the one that has to go into the clinic, but it just shows such a lack of education about coercion. And I've had people whose husbands told them they would leave them if they didn't get an abortion. Or me, I was 17, I was kicked out of the house, no job, no money, no place to go, until I caved into what my father wanted me to do. There's so many different things there. It's totally so unmerciful to say things like that, because how are we going to invite, I always say, like, Jesus came to save souls. That's why he came to earth. Like Father Monsignor Riley, I love that man so much, from God's Precious Infants. And he always says, like, I don't worry about the babies. He said, the babies are in heaven. I'm here to save souls. I'm a priest. I mean, so obviously he's trying to get people to stop going into the clinic so that they don't do that damage to the baby and themselves. But he's also there when they come out, because he wants them to know there can be forgiveness and healing. And I think that, that's what Jesus came to earth for, to forgive our sins, to call people back to himself. And I think that the message is not out there enough in our faith. I honestly really believe that. I feel like there's a lot of judgment. I mean, sometimes even on my own thread, people will say things to me. I mean, thanks be to God, I don't really care what they say, because I have found God's mercy and forgiveness. And as long as I got that, I don't need anything else. But some of the things they say, if somebody was to come forward for healing, it's enough to really make them turn back the other way. Do you know what I mean? Because they just feel so judged by people. And I think that a lot of work needs to be done there, because you know what? The bottom line is every single one of us is a sinner. We're all in need of God's mercy and his forgiveness, no matter what our sins are. And unless we're going to be the face of Christ to people, look at all the souls that are lost because of this. It's heart-wrenching, right?
And as you mentioned, I mean, the walking wounded, there are so many people who have been hurt by abortion. And you talk about how you came to God's mercy out of total desperation, not because you were, overly pious. It was because you wanted to die.
Right.
It hurt so much. And years ago, when Sister Mary Elizabeth ran the Respect Life office, one of the Sisters of Life in New York, she brought in this program, Abortion Changes You.
Right.
And it's the woman who runs it is an evangelical Christian, but she takes a secular approach, because she knows not everyone can talk about divine mercy right now, or is interested in talking about divine mercy. So just simply, the website is Abortion Changes You, to simply be at the place where you can acknowledge that it wasn't nothing, and it did change you. And that's okay, because as you said, Teresa, like, if you had a baby in your womb and then didn't, and
how could it not change you?
Right, exactly. That would be a problem.
Yeah.
So for our culture in this post-Roe reality, we need to double down on acknowledging, exactly what you were talking about, Teresa, earlier. The media will say that it's traumatic not to have an abortion, but it's been traumatic for all the women who have had abortions, and we haven't been honest about that, and we have to be honest about that.
But they won't let you get a voice out there. It's like, it's just so crazy. Like, there's very few people, like, you really don't see people that have had abortions out there talking very much in the mainstream media, no matter which media it is. Always, and nothing bad about, like Lila Rose. She's fantastic. She's articulate. It's not that I have anything against her. But sometimes I just say, like, why aren't we hearing people that have experienced this, that knows what it does to their lives, that knows what it does to women, that can speak to that woman who's sitting on her couch listening to this, that has told no one? Because there are women who have told no one. They're married, they have kids, their husband doesn't know, their kids don't know. They have told no one. I've had people that have called me that I've been the first person that they ever told about their abortion, and they've been holding it in for years. I mean, it's so prevalent, and we don't acknowledge that. And I think as a church, it's just such a failure for us that not to be able to get that message out, that there is hope and there is healing. And especially because, Catherine, I mean, like, I just really feel like in our faith, in the Catholic faith, I mean, we have the gifts of the sacraments, which are so powerful, the gifts of the sacrament of reconciliation, the Eucharist, and we have such tools available for us for healing. And it's not like that's the only aspect, because obviously there's a psychological part, there's all different aspects to it, but that is like a huge thing to
Mhm.
be able to be able to have the sacraments available to us. And it's just so, I don't know, like I'm a firm believer every bulletin should have hurting after abortion, cool. You know what I mean? And every single one, God's mercy is there for you. I mean, that's something I just think should be on every single bulletin. And it should be a part of every pro-life talk that there's healing available for people. And
Well, I think when you walk in the vestibule of every church, there should be a QR code that will bring you to a ministry like yours. Because one of the problems is, you know better than I, that if you are a Catholic who goes to church on Sunday and you hear an announcement about such a ministry, often women don't want to step up because they don't want the priest to know they had an abortion.
Right.
They don't want anyone to know they had an abortion, and which is very understandable. But one of the beautiful things about your ministry is she's not alone.
Right.
You yourself had an abortion. You know, the fellowship is so important. You talked about the importance of the sacraments in a Catholic context because we believe in the sacraments. You know, this is God directly in touching you and changing you. And but the fellowship and the witness to other women,
important.
if you're not Catholic, great.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, we have people like you know, like I said, entering Canaan, we've been doing it for 26 years. I can't even believe that it's 26 years since we started that. And that started, of course, with Cardinal O'Connor. I used to like haunt Cardinal O'Connor about doing something for post-abortion before there was a Sisters of Life. And he promised me that when they formed the Sisters of Life, that would be one of the ministries. So that's really how it got started. And there's women that came in the beginning when the sisters and I first started the ministry that I'm still really close to. Matter of fact, last Friday night, there was a dinner, you know, with a bunch of the women from the ministry that have been involved for a very long time. Not that they haven't had healing, but just because there's such that camaraderie, that sisterhood between each other, helping each other through their healing and stuff. And it's just such a beautiful bond that people then have to show, to work through that pain and find God's mercy. And then to say, this mercy isn't just for me. This mercy is there for everyone. And I want other women to know that they don't have to live in this pain and suffering, that they can, you know, that they can have his mercy and healing too. And it's just such a beautiful relationship that the women have with each other, the men, the siblings. I mean, the siblings, we've been doing that for 11 years now, and it's been amazing. They come from all over the country to come to the retreat, and they are so relieved that they're not alone anymore because they've been suffering with this. Would my name be the same? Like just so many things. Would I even be here? Did my mother want me? Like they go between protecting the mother. Some of them, the parents don't even know that they know. So there's so many dynamics there, you know? So it's just, even with them, it's just so wonderful to be with other people, you know, that understand what they're going through because they're feeling the same thing. And that in and of itself brings healing.
Teresa, super practical question in the chat box. What is the best way to approach someone who has had an abortion to encourage them to seek healing from ministries like yours? Sometimes it's hard to talk to people, obviously, about their abortions because it's such a private and sensitive topic. I might add, especially if you haven't had an abortion. How do you bring this up with someone?
Well, I think that, first of all, is the first question I would ask is, that person, they shared their abortion with you, or have they told you that they're suffering? And if they had, then I would just give them, you know, a number or information and let them know that there's help there. Some people do not admit that they're suffering and stuff like that, but maybe somebody that loves them does recognize that they are. So a great thing that I think that has worked many times, well, I've had a few different things. One time somebody put information in this person's mailbox and didn't say that they put it there, but then the person had it. And that's how I found out, because she ended up calling. She said, somebody put this in my mailbox. And then another thing would be, just to say something like, oh, I went, like if you went to a talk by somebody that gave a witness or something like that, or something like this. Oh, I heard online this talk today. It was really great, blah, 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 blah. And not distinct, not so much for that telling them specifically to call, but you're letting them know it's okay, it's safe, this is available for you. And so kind of going in the back door type of thing, because it is tricky, and you don't want to tell somebody they're suffering if they're not ready to admit that they're suffering. But you can, if you let the mercy in there, they might be more willing to listen or to open themselves up to it a little bit, even if it's not to you right away.
And, I've been known to drop some post-abortion healing brochures in the back of churches myself, which you're not really supposed to do without talking to the priest, but I do it anyway. And sometimes other places, just
that's great
in case. You never know. And just sharing. I mean, your website is postabortionhelp.org.
Right. And there's also an Entering Canaan one too. It's enteringcanaan.com. So the Entering Canaan one is just on the ministry itself, right? Yeah. So it's specific. It just describes what the ministry is, the actual ministry that we do, the retreats and stuff like that. Postabortionhelp.org is more general about different aspects of healing from abortion, things like that, more general.
Well, one can just share that on social media. You don't even have to comment,
Right. That's
like,
right.
This exists, and God only knows what might happen, who it might reach. I noticed someone who's watching live raised their hand, but what we're doing is putting the questions in the chat box. So if you do that, we'll incorporate it in our conversation. Another practical question, Teresa: are there resources for men whose babies were aborted against?
We have a men's retreat coming up on September 24th in Connecticut. And yes, there's definitely resources for men. There's a lot of different ministries out there. We do retreats for men that are wonderful. The Friars of the Renewal, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal do it. And we have, a man give his testimony, and there's group, and it's an amazing day. I mean, I always like to share this. One time when we had the retreat, the men, they're not so in touch with their feelings, or they're a lot more guarded or whatever. And they come in and they're all like tough. And at the end of the day, when we're ending the day, we could be in the chapel and they'll be weeping. And Father Marius always says, I don't know what else is going on in the world today, but nothing could beat this. I mean, it's just like there's such healing that has happened during the day. So if anyone is interested in the Men's Day, yeah, for sure, go to the website, give me a call, and we'll connect you. And it's on September 24th, so not that far away.
Well, I remember one day being at the Sisters of Life Convent in Westchester, where their mission is
right.
Healing, and it was I think it was the Monday after a weekend retreat, and there were all these roses on the altar because they put roses. They give roses to Mary symbolically, but in their prayer, a real thing to represent each child. And what I was so overwhelmed by is there was something like 19 women on this retreat, but there were like 75 roses.
Yeah.
So every woman had lost more than one baby to abortion. But the tremendous release that must be. And we talked about sort of how Catholics owe the world an apology because we don't scream mercy from the rooftops all the time. But on the other hand, I'm also thinking about our dear friend, Father Kurtursky, a Jesuit priest who died about a year ago, last year. And he's one of the priests who, and there are many others, Father Fidelis Machinsky, and just so many who do make themselves available for these retreats,
right?
For confession and other things. And that's such a beautiful ministry and so important.
When Father Kurtursky was actually, he sent me one of the first people I ever started working with individually. When he was at Fordham, it was a couple that had gone to him that had had an abortion, and I started, seeing them. They were wonderful. He was wonderful. Yeah, big loss for us, right? But he better be praying for us.
Right? I count on that.
Right.
But here's this world-class intellectual who my understanding was just Father Joe to some of these moms and women who were suffering, who he really loved.
He was great. He was great. Yeah, there is a wonderful, I mean, a lot of the friars work with us. There's a lot of great priests out there that are doing it. There's no question about it, that have the heart for it, you know, and the understanding. And actually entering Canaan is now all across the country, keeps on getting more and more. So it's beautiful. And there's other ministries out there too. So, you know, we just pray that we just keep on reaching more and more people to bring them in for healing, right? And bring them to God's mercy and his forgiveness, and so that they have that peace in their lives again. You know, there is peace again.
And do you ever have people who are not Catholic going on these retreats?
Yes, as a matter of fact, with the sisters, I don't do the women around here anymore. The sisters do the women, right? But we had at one point, we had a Jewish woman that was with us for a really long time. And we also had a Muslim woman that was with us for a really long time. And the only reason why she didn't come anymore was because she moved. But she was involved in the ministry for years. Yeah, because, I mean, you know, the ministry, it deals with spiritual, of course, but it also deals with psychological, emotional, all of that stuff. So we've always been of the mindset, come take what you want and leave the rest. Do you know what I mean? Because it is beneficial to them.
And again, the fellowship, the knowledge that you're not.
The fellowship and learning about the psychological impact, because there are definitely a lot of psychological impact that there's of abortion, that, you know, there's something we call abortion connectors, that people, places, and things that will remind you of abortion in the present, you know, and stir trauma, but you don't know that's what it is. So you might overreact to things. So identifying those things. So there's a lot of dynamics that go along with it that obviously you need to learn in order to be on the healing journey, you know, and you don't have to be Catholic to learn those things. So it's definitely, anybody is welcome to attend the ministry for sure.
And if we can convey anything by this little conversation here today, I really, really want it to be that, first of all, if you've had an abortion, you are so loved, and there's such healing and forgiveness that is out there for you. But also, if you haven't had an abortion, be cognizant of the pain out there, and how, again, as we've talked about, the people yelling, the people on Facebook adamant about abortion, people who are enthusiastic about abortion are hurting. And we have to realize that and treat them with love.
Well, and that's one thing that I really feel like, you know what I love before the Witness for Life, when Father Fidelis says we're going to get yelled at and all this other stuff. And I understand if you think that you know, it's really hard or whatever, I invite you to stay in the church, because it's so true. Because that back and forth screaming, it doesn't accomplish anything. You get caught into that, and you're really not doing anything to help anyone. I mean, the best thing that we could do is pray for them. And even like on, you know, all these different things, like to spend that time really praying for their conversion, making offerings, doing things like that. That's what's going to change people's hearts. To fight with them, I mean, it's different if you could sit down and have a normal conversation, but to fight with them or whatever isn't going to change anybody's heart. It's only going to, you know, make things worse in the end.
And very often, you know, where you start with someone, I mean, if someone's yelling at you, that's one particular instance, but sometimes the healing, walking with somebody, accompanying somebody on a healing journey isn't going to start with you talking about abortion. It's going to start with having a chat about, you know, over coffee, about the new movie out or whatever it is. So somebody can really learn to trust you,
right?
That they're loved.
Yeah, because, and that's exactly what happens, you know, because you kind of like put your feelers out when you're post-abortive, like, especially like how many people are involved in the pro-life movement that have had an abortion in their past, you know, and they don't tell anybody. They're watching. They want to know if it's safe to be able to tell somebody or not. So the message that you send, like, I'll never forget one time, when we were praying in front of a clinic, and I was with a couple of people that had had abortions. One of them had had 3 abortions, and I was with a great pro-lifer. I love her to death, but we were walking and she said something like, well, I can understand how somebody would have 1, but I don't understand how anybody could have more than 1. And like, I just cringed because I knew one of the women with us had had 3, you know? So I think that, and it's not saying that the abortions are okay. Abortion's never okay. It's never, ever, ever okay. But at the same time, we need to reach out to these people in love for their conversions, to bring them back to God, to bring them to healing. And things like that are just not helpful. And that person obviously was never going to tell her about their abortions after she said something like that, you know? So we just need to be careful, I think, what we're saying.
I gather there was something going wrong with the chat function. So if you had a question, we'll extend for a few more minutes to make sure that you have a chance if you're watching this live. There's a question about, to ease the tensions in parishes, how can we incorporate a spectrum of life issues to create a climate of welcome? I noticed a couple of months ago, St. Joseph's in Greenwich Village they participated for the first time in 40 Days for Life. And 40 Days for Life is a prayer campaign where people, and it's ecumenical, pray outside of abortion clinics, and people who don't normally will participate in this vigil. And anyway, so they did it for the first time, and I know there was a little there were some parishioners who I think approached the pastor about it because it's like, why are you focusing on this one issue? Well, this campaign is about abortion, but that I think it is important to consider, like, when we're talking about this, or we're inviting people to a ministry, are we conveying a sense of, this isn't about a political issue, you know? This is about human beings hurting. And how do you do that in this environment, you know, where it's like another, so if
you know, chances are, I think that if somebody's saying something like that, oh, you're just going on one issue, there's a hurt there someplace most times, you know what I mean? And they just don't want to deal with that issue at all, you know? And as far as that goes, I honestly believe this is the issue. And I'm not saying other things are not important or that we shouldn't give any attention to other issues, but this is life. This is the issue of
human life,
innocent
human rights issue
in life, right? And if we're gonna, you know, like somebody the other day, they were talking about rescue, and you know, I know it's not for everybody, and some people agree with it and some people don't. And this is when people go into clinics in the waiting room and hand out roses to the women or whatever. And one of them was explaining it, and they were saying, you know, if your next door neighbor, if you knew your next door neighbor was chopping the legs and arms off of their child, would you not do anything if it was right next door to you? And you know, people don't think of it like that because we become so accustomed of just driving by clinics every day and walking by them and not really thinking about what's going on inside of them. But really, that's what's going on inside of these clinics. And so, you know, are other issues important? Of course there are. There's tons of important issues that we need to give attention to and stuff. But I really do believe this is the main issue because we're talking about life itself, and an innocent human life.
Right.
Innocent human life.
And all I would add to that is I think along with life, like, we're not going to get to a better place unless we support families.
Right.
And
that's the big key, right?
Exactly. And so I hope there's a marriage ministry too in your parish.
Yes, you know? That's right. I mean, and that's for sure. I mean, right.
And the other thing, I contend that we missed a huge opportunity when, and not just for Catholics, for the world, when Pope Francis had his encyclical Laudato Si, which everyone says is like the environmental encyclical. it's about so much more. It's about,
I don't remember it, but I remember I liked it when I read it.
well, yeah, he talked about how the human person is part of creation, how marriage is, part of what God created between a man and a woman, and so you can see this as, you can see the whole, that's not to say that, if you're talking about abortion, you have to be, supporting air conditioning regulations, because I think there was something about air conditioning regulations in it too.
Oh.
I don't care about air conditioning regulations as much as I care about the unborn, and I think that's probably natural. I also, I'm open to air conditioning regulations, but this is not the most important issue at the moment.
Right.
But my point is that this was an encyclical where people could actually see, hit reset and see the human person and human life and marriage and family as part of God's creation. And we have to take a few steps back sometimes, I think, and maybe that was sort of, if that helps to answer the question a little bit. Oh, I was just seeing that actually, Barb, as I was talking about Laudato Si, was suggesting exactly that. Yeah,
well, it is the truth, the demise of the family. That's what's really damaged us, right? There's no,
right.
That's the key thing.
When you mentioned that judge who was talking to her teenage daughter, who thought her life was over, I was thinking about our governor, Kathy Hochul in New York, whose reaction, I think it was the leak. Now I forget if it was the leak or the reversal. I think it was the leak of the Dobbs decision, was to go on Twitter and talk about her granddaughter, who's an infant, and her right to abort. Like, what?
I know.
It's a baby? Why are you thinking about abortion?
No.
But that goes to the sort of the perversions and the layers of lies and what it
makes
does.
you grateful for the grace of God, doesn't it?
Because
without God's grace,
that.
like that, right?
Yeah, Pope Francis also has this devotion to Mary, undoer of knots,
right?
And I love that, because it's like the idea is that these knots in people's lives are so, you can't undo it alone. So pray for divine intervention.
Yeah.
In this case, Catholics believe Mary always goes to her son to implore his help, and so that's another, I think, opportunity, to be able to say to the world, we know it's complicated, and that's why, we want to walk with you and let you know that you're not alone. Somebody in the chat box is saying, wouldn't it be beneficial if there were post-abortion ministry contact for every Catholic high school and college? And all high schools and colleges too. Yeah, absolutely. But as they were saying, it's not only the young who were affected by this. 49 years of legal abortion, and your abortion wasn't even during those 49 years.
Right. It was right before, a couple of years before it. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to. And, we used to go into the high schools, at least the Catholic ones and stuff, for a while, but even that hasn't really been happening, but yes, college campuses and stuff, there definitely should be information there for people who are suffering because of an abortion, without a doubt.
Well, I know the Sisters of Life, who, if you don't know them, are a community of women religious nuns, as they're known, who are dedicated to enhancing and protecting human life, and they welcome women into their homes who are pregnant and in need, and young moms with their children, and they help abortion-minded women who are looking for help and resources, because as you were saying, Teresa, so often there's coercion. There's also, if it's not direct coercion, it's all the pressures in their lives and in the culture say, have the abortion.
Too, there's also people think if a kid goes to a Catholic high school or a Catholic college that there isn't going to be, abortions there. And that's just so not true, because sometimes kids have abortions that are Catholic, because I've had more than once people that grew up, were involved in pro-life groups, were really pro-life, went away to college, ended up having premarital sex, getting pregnant, and aborted because they were mortified and embarrassed that they had premarital sex. So anyone who thinks that these things do not happen in Catholic colleges and high schools, yeah, unfortunately, it happens everywhere, and I think we have to be really aware of that and have these resources out there for them as well.
I was approached a couple months ago by a Catholic at a big Catholic college, university, and to talking about the possibility of being on the board. This is a big sized university too. And one of my first questions to him is, what's the deal with pregnancy on campus? And he had no idea. And this has to be a priority. I know my alma mater, Catholic University of America, is making this a priority because, and often you go to some of these schools, if they are paying attention, if somebody's paying attention, it's only a few. It's not only a few. If it's only a few, you probably don't know what's going on.
Right. Or they're hiding it, or because it's a Catholic college, they don't want people to know that they're pregnant, so they're going and having it. They feel judged, they don't want, again, they don't want people to know they're having sex. That's what happens at a lot of places like that, unfortunately, which again, then what's the message that we're sending out there? I mean, obviously you don't want to tell people it's okay to have premarital sex, but at the same time, there should be resources there so that if somebody, does find themselves in that situation, they don't feel like they have to have an abortion, or that.
I know I sound a million years old every time I say this, but we need to teach in both secular and religious contexts girls that they're worth waiting for, because they are, and they have no idea they are. Right. But we also have to convey that we live in the world and we know that people have sex. Right. So that they know, the young people in our lives know they can come to us if they find themselves in an imperfect situation. Every situation is imperfect when you think about it. So just be able to convey that if young people in our lives become pregnant, we will help them. We will help them.
That there's going to be support there for them. Exactly.
Our first reaction will not be, you're awful or you're going to hell or something.
Right. Exactly.
That's not what mercy is about. That's not what Christianity is about. And so I apologize on behalf of anybody who's treated you, if you're watching this, or someone you love like that. I know a lot of people walk away from religion because of some rude, awful thing said by someone who professes to be Christian. So post-Roe, we really have to double down on the mercy because of all of pain. And Teresa, thank you for being a voice who tells the truth about your own journey, about all the pain, all the pain you've listened to and walked with people again, and not
just a blessing. It's been a gift to me. There's nothing better than seeing somebody to come in totally broken, full of despair and whatever, and walk through healing with them and see joy and forgiveness and mercy in their lives. It's a gift to me. It really is.
The websites again, Teresa?
It's postabortionhelp.org, and the retreat one is enteringcanaan.com.
And your book is a journey healing through divine mercy. Thank you so much, Teresa Bonaparte,
for having me on, and enjoy your trip to Nashville. Catherine's going to Nashville, everybody.
I am, and I hope to visit a couple pro-life ministries that I can tell you about.
That'd be great
when I get back. And next week, if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this before next Friday, the first Friday in August, whatever day that is, I'll be talking to the National Review Institute's John McCormick about his new article in National Review about the different states and the different laws that we're dealing with. So I think that'll be a really practical conversation about what we're reading about in the news and maybe what's going on in your state if you're not on top of it and want to get more involved. So thank you again, Teresa.
Thank you
everyone for joining, and please do share this on our YouTube page, the National Review Institute's YouTube page, with people you love. And you can just simply say, this is an interesting conversation I listened to today. You don't have to take a side or anything, because we need to do everything we can to make clear that this is not a mere political issue. This is about human lives in a way, in addition to the human rights issue, right? We were talking about
human souls too, right?
Exactly. People are broken.
Life, right?
Yeah, we don't want people to be hurting, and there are resources. So thank you very much.